Welcome to the Washington Watch News Desk. I'm Sarah Holliday with today's top stories. Over the weekend, Israel launched airstrikes in Yemen, targeting Iran-backed Houthi terrorists. This was no random strike, but a direct response to the Houthis firing a new type of missile at central Israel. Thankfully, that attack was intercepted with no reported injuries. But the Israeli military hit back, specifically zeroing in on the Houthi launch sites used in their assault. Now, the Houthis are proclaiming solidarity with Palestinian militants, and they're vowing more attacks. With the Israel-Hamas war already raging, this latest clash raises a chilling question. Are we on the brink of an even broader conflict? Stay with us as this story unfolds. Back on U.S. soil, the battle against violent crime apparently is just getting started. On August 11th, President Donald Trump sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. to tackle violent crime. The mission's still underway, but Trump's already eyeing other cities for similar action.
Look, Chicago, everybody knows how bad it is. Everybody standing there knows. We know. You don't have to be doing any studies. They should be saying, please come in. We go in, we will solve Chicago within 1 week, maybe less, but within 1 week we will have no crime in Chicago, just like we have no crime in D.C. I didn't get a request from the governor of Illinois, who is affected maybe more than anybody else, right? And I think until I get that request from that guy, I'm not going to do anything about it.
If any action is taken, Chicago's at the top of Trump's list. But other cities like New York City and Baltimore are also in his sights. Trump's son even suggested this fight extend to cities in the Pacific Northwest. But here's the rub. Chicago's leaders are not too thrilled about Trump's crime-fighting crusade.
That's not Chicago. That's not America. We won't bend. We won't cower. We will not break under this authoritarianism rule.
Speaking of combating crime, so-called sanctuary cities are under fire for not cooperating with federal immigration enforcement. The Trump administration is doubling down on its crackdown on illegal immigration, securing the border by deporting those who've entered illegally. As part of this push, Trump aimed to withhold funding from 34 sanctuary cities and counties for their refusal to comply. However, a federal judge just threw a wrench in the works. In a 15-page ruling, Judge William Orrick declared Trump's orders unconstitutional, arguing they overstep presidential authority and trample local rights. Clearly, this isn't just about border security. It's a full-blown legal clash between the White House and defiant cities. And in the heart of the immigration storm, one name keeps making waves: Kilmar Abrego Garcia. If you missed the headlines, Garcia was initially painted by mainstream media as a Maryland man wrongfully deported to El Salvador by the Trump administration. Now he's back in the U.S., and there's way more to the story. The Department of Justice isn't mincing words. Not only have they said Garcia is not a U.S. citizen, but the DOJ has accused him of ties to the notorious MS-13 gang. The DOJ also claims he's guilty of engaging in sexual misconduct with young girls, beating his wife, and running an illegal alien smuggling ring. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's hardly the picture of an average Maryland resident. Garcia is facing a trial, but the Trump administration's issued an ultimatum: plead guilty to human smuggling charges and accept relocation to Costa Rica, or face immediate deportation to Uganda, possibly as early as today. This case is a tangled web, and it shines a spotlight on Trump's aggressive push for border security through mass deportation. It also clearly demonstrates the legal minefield standing in his way. And those are today's headlines. I'm Sarah Holliday. Dive deeper with the Washington Stand at WashingtonStand.com. Watch this and other news on the Stand Firm mobile app, and follow us on social media for updates at FRCDC. Up next, we have Washington Watch with guest host Jody Heiss. We're back tomorrow with more stories that matter.
From the heart of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., bringing compelling interviews, insightful analysis, taking you beyond the headlines and sound bites into conversations with our nation's leaders and newsmakers, all from a biblical worldview. Sitting in for Tony is today's host, Jody Heiss.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to this Monday edition of Washington Watch. I'm Jody Heiss, Senior Fellow here at the Family Research Council, and very honored to be filling in for Tony. Thank you for joining us in this next hour. We've got a lot to bring your way. Here are some of the highlights. President Trump continues his efforts to tackle crime in our nation's capital and across the country, for that matter. He's signed today some executive orders, including one on cashless bail.
Somebody kills somebody, they go in, don't worry about it, no cash, come back in a couple of months, we'll give you a trial. You never see the person again. And I mean, they kill people and they get out. Cashless bail. They thought it was discriminatory to make people put up money because they just killed 3 people lying on a street. Any street all over the country, cashless bail. We're ending it, but we're starting by ending it in D.C.
That, of course, was President Trump speaking to reporters earlier today. And I'll discuss this and more when I'm joined in just a couple of minutes by South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman. And it's not just violent crime that the Trump administration has been tackling, but it's also what should be considered crimes against the nation's children. And that's the crime of so-called gender reaffirming care. And thankfully, hospitals all across the nation are now reversing course as a result of ending these harmful, experimental, and irreversible procedures. And I'll discuss the latest here later in the program when I'm joined by Dr. Quentin Van Meter from the American College of Pediatricians. So you want to be sure to stick around for that. Meanwhile, overseas, the Trump administration continues its effort to shrink the amount of taxpayer dollars that are going to a program called PEPFAR. It was originally designed to deal with AIDS across the different places of the world, but it's been hijacked to promote abortion and LGBT ideology abroad. Well, Max Primorak, who formerly served in the United States Agency for International Development, will join me a little bit later to talk about that. And then lastly today, I'll be joined by CBN News' Chris Mitchell to discuss some of the latest developments in the Middle East, including the unfortunate and tragic and unintentional strike on a hospital in Gaza. He will be joining me from Israel. So as always, we've got a lot to bring your way in the next hour. You don't want to miss any of it, but if you do, you've got a couple of options. Our website, TonyPerkins.com. You can find a lot of information there, or better yet, you can simply download the Stand Firm app, where we not only have this program, we've got the Washington Stand, we've got absolutely a ton of information there for you on the Stand Firm app. To get yours, simply text the word app, APP, to 67742. And then I also want to encourage you again, Pray Vote Stand. That summit is coming up October 17th and 18th. It'll be in Chino Hills, California. You can get more info on that by going to prayvotestand.org. All right, let's jump into our first news item for today. Earlier today, President Trump signed an executive order that's aimed at forcing Washington, D.C. to end the use of what he calls cashless bail. He also signed an executive order tasking Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to establish special units within the National Guard to address crime in other cities. So with President Trump as the new sheriff in town, the question is, will we see similar success in other parts of the world as we are seeing right here in D.C.? Well, joining me now by phone to discuss this and more is Congressman Ralph Norman. He serves on several committees, including the Budget Committee. He represents the 5th Congressional District of the great state of South Carolina. Congressman Norman, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Well, always great to be on when you're hosting, Jody. Thank you.
Well, it's our privilege always. And listen, before we get to these executive orders, I'd like to get your overall assessment of what the president has been doing there in relation to crime right there in Washington, D.C. Your thoughts?
You know, what we're seeing, Jody, is a leader at every level. You know, what this man is doing, and I've characterized him as a phenom, because what he's doing, when we saw Joe Biden give, $1.4 billion cash to the number one sponsor of terror in Iran, and the president took him out with bombs, and everything else he's doing with the trade policies and restoring law and order is just unbelievable. And we've got him up for the Nobel Peace Prize with what he's doing to bring peace all around the world. But he's what he's doing is phenomenal, and he's bringing America back, and people are enthusiastic at every level, not just with the things he's doing, but new companies are opening up, particularly in South Carolina, because of his policies overall.
Yeah, you know, when I walk around D.C. and different, you see the National Guard, their presence is unmistakable. They're everywhere. And, you know, it makes an impact. In fact, the president was saying today there hasn't been a murder in Washington in 11 days or something like that. But you just feel safer, wouldn't you agree?
Not only safer, that's the reality. The numbers don't lie. And, you know, Washington has become a cesspool of just bad policy, homelessness. And, you know, for us to have have to debate this, I mean, they're the city that the leaders, the Mayor Bowser, wanted to have illegals vote. And have just visitors who come to Washington, D.C. vote in the elections. I mean, it's unbelievable that she's even doing this, but no, it's great. You know, our nation's capital deserves to be safe, and it's just not. And President Trump is correcting it, and he's doing it with, as usual, a lot of criticism, but he's holding to his to what he told the American people he's doing. It's paying dividends. And, you know, you wonder if some of these policymakers who are opposing him at every level, if it were their child who got raped or murdered, if it were their wife who got... Hello?
Yeah, it's a good point. Good point. Can you hear me, Ralph?
Yeah, I can. Loud and clear.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's move on. The executive order he signed on cashless bail. What's your take on that?
Again, it's hard to believe cities would even resort to that. He's dead on it with that. And I think to cut the funding for those municipalities and states who have that is the right thing to do at the right time. So imagine committing a crime that they're known for, not to mention the ones that they never got caught for. And as the president said, to have no bail and hope that they show up makes no sense.
You look at what the president has already been able to accomplish right there in D.C., and now he has his sights on other cities. You have people like Minnesota Governor Tim Walz came out today saying that, you know, him taking the National Guard or trying to lessen crime in other cities is un-American and unconstitutional. Your thoughts on that, Congressman?
Just a mismatch of words. Same thing Kamala Harris, the word salad that she used to describe anything. I guess what's Tim Walz's solution? Just continue the crime and to continue the cities to be under siege at every level? No. That's why he's not vice president. That's why Kamala Harris is not in the Oval Office today. 77 million people disagree with his liberal policies, and how he continues to hold office is another enigma to me.
Yeah, good point. Well, I know there's another issue that you've been staying very much on top of, Congressman Norman. That is Kilmar Abrego Garcia and all the MS-13 gang involvement that allegedly he's been involved with. Well, he was taken into custody today and currently is being held, as I understand it, at a detention center in Virginia, where he's facing deportation, but a judge has temporarily barred deportation to Uganda until she has a hearing about it all. What are your thoughts on this individual and the latest developments that just seem to be happening every day with him?
Well, it's just the liberal media promoting, a criminal who, imagine them picking a person who was convicted of smuggling, we don't know what else he's done. And the president's right to do what he did. The courts have fought him at every level. From every deportation he's done, they're still fighting Tom Homan on what he's doing. And, it's amazing and unbelievable that they're taking the stance that they are, but nothing has changed with them. This country has rebounded like we've never seen in every way, and they're going to fight him on this. And I know, the Uganda putting him there would seem to be the right place to get him and not have to pay for him here in the United States. But that'll be another fight for another day that the president will gladly take up.
Yeah, it's amazing how he seems to just get stronger and stronger as the pressure rises. But one thing in this particular case, Congressman Ralph Norman, that got me was his lawyers are saying that there is no reason to detain Garcia. And I kind of scratched my head over that. This guy is a bad guy. What more reasons do you need than to hold someone like this?
Well, gang members are not known for teaching Bible study. The reason they're gang members is to to commit crimes. Human smuggling, if that's not a reason to deport somebody that's here illegally anyway, I don't know what is. But again, it's the same song that the media has been singing, and the judges have got to be held accountable at some point. And I'm just glad he's taking the fight to him. And the executive orders, I don't know of one executive order that he has not been right on and pro-American, and American people are excited about what he's doing.
Yeah, and what do you think about all the pushback? I know when we served together in oversight and different committees, we were able to watch it. I was able to watch it firsthand. Now being removed from that, you're at the tip of the spear with all this. But the pushback that we've seen against ICE, against every attempt of just common sense stuff of dealing with crime and all this sort of stuff coming both from the media as well as it seems like the entire Democratic Party. What do you make of the pushback that we're seeing against these type of things?
The Democratic Party is no longer the party of the people. They're socialists. The president calls them communists. But the fact that they wouldn't even stand during the State of the Union for the little boy that had cancer, the fact that they are not standing with Israel, they're anti-American. And think about it, Jody, they don't get it. They have been paying all these people for sessions with, trying to learn how to communicate. They really need to get some core values, which they don't have. And there is no crossing the line with these people. The only thing you deal with is trying to get them out of office. And I think the American people during the midterms will see that.
Well, we will see. There's a lot unfolding across the board with redistricting and all that sort of stuff going on, too. But, yeah, it makes perfect sense to me that now's a golden opportunity for the American people to have a strong statement. Congressman Ralph Norman, South Carolina, always great to have you on the program, my friend. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
My pleasure, Jody. Thank you.
All right, friends, coming up, the tide is turning when it comes to transgendering of children. I'll discuss this with Dr. Quentin Van Meter of the American College of Pediatricians right after the break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a moment.
3 years ago, the Supreme Court issued its historic Dobbs decision, a ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade, which for nearly 50 years imposed abortion on demand, silencing voters and bypassing the democratic process across the country. The Dobbs decision was a huge step forward against abortion, but it didn't outright ban it. It returned the power to the people. Now, 29 states have laws on the books protecting life. However, there's a catch. Abortion numbers since Dobbs have actually gone up, with an increase of 12% since 2020, climbing from 930,000 to over 1 million in each of the most recent years. So how can this be? The answer is simple: the abortion drug. Today, over 60% of U.S. abortions involve abortion drugs, many of these without medical oversight. In 2021, the Biden administration quietly removed bare minimum long-standing safety protocols for the abortion drug that have existed for 20 years to protect women from life-threatening risks and ensuring informed consent. The Biden DOJ then declared that they would not enforce the Comstock Act, which prevents the mailing of anything that causes an abortion. This is not only illegal, but also dangerous. A study shows nearly 11% of women who take the abortion drug end up in the emergency room with serious complications. Unless the Trump administration reverses these reckless Biden-era policies, pro-life laws will remain largely symbolic. Without a full review and repeal of mifepristone, unborn lives will remain in grave danger and pregnant mothers will remain at risk. Let's stand for life and end this mail-order abortion drug pipeline. Sign the petition urging the Trump administration to take action at frc.org/stopchemicalabortion.
Few people have had the positive Christ-honoring impact upon the family as Dr. James Dobson. His legacy will be lasting. In every sphere in which he engaged, he served the cause of Christ and proclaimed God's faithfulness to his people. He brought to public policy a new focus on the timelessness of family. All of us at Family Research Council extend our sympathy and prayers to the entire Dobson family. Dr. Dobson fought the good fight of faith, finished the course, and kept the faith. He leaves a legacy for his own family and millions of families worldwide. Well done.
We cannot give up. And we've got the Lord on our side. We can't forget that. We're not alone in this thing. The Lord has called us to a battle. He's called us to fight with everything that we have.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Washington Watch. I'm Jody Heiss, an honor to be filling in today for Tony, and thank you for tuning in as well. All right, there's some encouraging news and new developments in the battle to protect children from so-called gender-affirming care, which, quite frankly, friends, it's really gender-denying mutilation is what this is. But nonetheless, this past Friday, the Alaska State Medical Board approved unanimously, by the way, a draft regulation that will hold medical professionals accountable for facilitating gender procedures on minors. And keep in mind, these procedures are harmful, they're experimental, they are irreversible. And now any medical professional engaged in such practices in Alaska would be conducting what they consider unprofessional conduct. So what can we make of this development? With me now to discuss this is pediatric endocrinologist Dr. Quentin Van Meter. He's a member of the executive committee of the American College of Pediatricians. Dr. Van Meter, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always an honor to have you.
I'm honored to be here once again. And the news from Alaska is enheartening in that the state medical board has taken up a position that really every state medical board in the country needs to consider. If this is done, this is how physicians are regulated. This is how they are kept within the standards of care. This is how they are then taken to task if they step outside those standards and do things that are against the standards of care determined by the state medical boards. When a state medical board acts as Alaska has done, just as Florida has done in the past, very successfully, then there need to be no laws at the state level that interfere with medical care, if you will. They don't have to establish something that the state medical board should be doing in the first place. So this is good news. It's recognized at that state level. It's not yet official, but we are looking forward to the final word on the appropriate passage of this particular recommendation from the state medical board.
Yeah, so what would this mean? I said that their comment is anyone participating in these type of surgeries, procedures would be exhibiting unprofessional conduct. What does that mean, and is there any consequence for unprofessional conduct?
Well, state medical boards can look at people who step outside the standards of care repeatedly and with warning for letting them know that they have been found wanting in their behaviors and their conduct. And then built in, and I don't know the specifics of this particular state board's mechanism of action, but they can sanction the physicians and remove their license to practice in the state. I'm not sure exactly what the degree of that is within this Alaskan document that's being formulated, but that is usually what happens is if the doctors are outside the standard of care and practice inappropriately, they can be reprimanded, warned, and then if they do not turn around their behaviors, they can be sanctioned and removed from licensure in the state.
Good to know. It's pretty evident that public sentiment on this issue has changed drastically in recent times. Do you think the medical community is finally coming around to their senses? I mean, we now have at least 21 hospitals across the country that are ending or vastly restricting these type of procedures. Do you think the medical community as a whole is coming to its senses with this?
Well, the medical community as a whole has always been up to its senses. It's just the sort of peripheral people who are in charge of guidelines, if you will, from professional associations such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, and the Endocrine Society here in the U.S., and WPATH, the international organization, they are holding fast to their belief that they've been doing the right thing in terms of taking these children socially, medically, and surgically transitioning them before their age of majority at 18. They've been wrong. They've been proven to be wrong by the world community at large. But here in the United States, it's almost a window dressing where these hospitals say, oh, we are now complying, we've shut down our clinics. Well, in truth, particularly in the Chicago area, there is an underground network on the internet saying, hey, we understand that you can't get this done at the university anymore, but boy, have we got some resources for you out in the community. You can call this place, you can call that place, you can get your puberty blockers, you can get your psychological care. It won't be funded by any insurance that takes federal funding because that's what was cut off. It's a little foolhardy because federal funding for the medical schools that run these teaching hospitals is contingent on them not doing these things anymore. But there's, again, a network to get them out of those transgender clinics in the health centers and out in the community under wraps, if you will. So the DOJ is looking into the medical records of these individuals and trying to figure out exactly what they're up to, where they're hiding things. And of course, Planned Parenthood is out there wide open saying, hey, we're doing less abortions. We now have transgender care for you, and nobody's watching and nobody cares. So come over to us and we'll take care of all your needs. So it appears like a victory in many ways, and it is. I don't want to diminish the work of the state legislatures who've put these things into place. But, it's like they're just not really telling you what's really going on. There's no transparency at these transgender centers from the universities. You can't find out the number of patients. You can't find out what they're doing. They just say, we've shut down. Have a nice day.
Wow. Well, definitely that transparency needs to be brought to the table. And, I think the more we talk about these things and expose it, the more likelihood that transparency will become a reality. Only about a minute or so left, Dr. Van Meter. What more needs to be done? What's your hope as we look forward on this issue?
What needs to be done is there needs to be accountability and transparency demanded by some regulatory organization to open the books on every single transgender clinic in this country, to request all medical records, all things that have happened. It can be blinded in terms of the patient identification, but every single patient needs to be accounted for. What did they do? When did they arrive at the clinic? How fast were they placed on medications? What kind of counseling, what extensive counseling was done? All this needs to be laid out on the table in an open forum so that we can see what's really been going on. Because without that, there's almost a sense of we're going to do what we want to do no matter what, and no matter what the government does to us, they're evil. We're going to go ahead and continue what we want to do.
Thank you, Dr. Quentin Van Meter, Executive Committee member of the American College of Pediatricians. Great information. Thank you for joining us on Washington Watch. All right, friends, coming up, the Trump administration is trying to stop billions of dollars from going to a program that is just promoting LGBT and abortion around the world. So stick around. We'll give it to you right after this.
Download the new Stand Firm app for Apple and Android phones today. You can join a wonderful community of fellow believers. We've created a special place for you to access news from a biblical perspective. Read and listen to daily devotionals, pray for current events, and more. Share the Stand Firm app with your friends, family, and church members. And of course, stand firm wherever you go.
At Family Research Council, defending the family isn't just a mission, it's our daily calling. Every team member at FRC uses their God-given talents to stand for biblical truth, protect life, and uphold religious freedom.
Here at Family Research Council, we face many threats to the family, threats that have been with us for some time. Abortion, the gender ideology threat, the attacks on marriage, the attacks on parental authority, and the attacks on religious freedom. We have to promote, support, strengthen, and incentivize family growth so families take their place in society in a place of honor.
I'm defending the family by working in the Center for Biblical Worldview to provide cutting-edge research and resources for pastors, ministry leaders, and Christian parents.
Through my work at the Washington Stand, I passionately defend what God has defined for marriage and family. I don't see the Washington Stand as just a place to talk about cultural events. It's a place to share biblical truth. It's a perfect outlet to advance and defend what God has defined as good, true, and beautiful.
Because of you, we're able to frame things in such a way that help Christians stand for truth on the things that matter most, like life, faith, family, and freedom.
Thank you for standing with us.
Thank you for your support. It is so critical to the work that we at Family Research Council are doing day to day as we support and strengthen the family. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Washington Watch. I'm Jody Heiss, filling in for Tony, and glad to have you with us. All right, it's called PEPFAR. PEPFAR, you've heard us talk a lot about it. PEPFAR stands for the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR. It was established back in 2003 as an effort to respond to the AIDS crisis in Africa, but it has been hijacked by the left to promote abortion and LGBT ideology abroad. And it has grown, by the way, from having a $1.5 billion price tag to now having more than $6 billion. And that's all tax dollars. Well, the New York Times is reporting that the Office of Management and Budget has apportioned less than half of that $6 billion, and the left is just having a fit over all of that, claiming somehow that HIV programs are eroding. But what's really behind all of this and all the protests, all that's going on? Joining me now to discuss this is Max Primorak. He was formerly serving as the United States Agency for International Development as Deputy Administrator. He's now a senior fellow at the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation. Max, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you.
Thank you, Congressman. Great to be here.
Okay, so for those who have not been tracking all that the Trump administration has been doing to shrink the amount of tax dollars, for example, going to PEPFAR, give us a little background of all of this.
Sure. This is a program that had a very good start, good intention. It was a real crisis. Millions were on the verge of dying, and President Bush and a lot of faith leaders came together to respond to it. And they did an amazing job. But we're in year 23, 24 of what is an emergency program. That's the E in PEPFAR. And after a while, you had a self-serving industry get involved in turning it into a permanent entitlement program, especially for themselves. And as we've seen in culture and universities and elsewhere, the foreign aid industry also has been taken hostage by the extreme left. And you're right, when you look at the folks who are doing this kind of work, 98% of their political donations go to left-wing candidates. It becomes a sinecure for a lot of Democratic Party operatives. And when you look at where the money is spent, and I think this is something that's animating the White House, we're seeing that at least half of the money never leaves D.C. Now, you said over $6 billion, but it's actually closer to $7 billion. So think about $3.5 billion, if not more, of that money staying here inside Washington, D.C. to effectively serve as a money pot for the left. And I think what this administration is doing, and correctly so, is seeing where can we really maximize the help, take out the corrupt middle, and empower Africans to start providing their own social services. Right now, what's happening is the Africans are being kept dependent on this form of aid. And meanwhile, you have a lot of the contractors, UN agencies, and international NGOs getting rich off of it.
Well, that is stunning information. I hope that our viewers and listeners right now is catching what you said, how this has really turned into a slush fund, really right here in Washington, D.C. It's just unbelievable. So what needs to happen? At the end of the day, what needs to happen with PEPFAR?
Well, I think the administration is doing it. It's looking very closely at where the money is going. And every administration, whether it's Democrat or Republican, has always talked about localization, and that is working directly with African partners, especially the churches that are the mainstay of providing medical care to Africans throughout the continent, and seeing how we can work more directly with them because they've got the talent. They're on the ground, and eliminate that very expensive and bureaucratic middle, the international NGOs, the UN agencies, for-profit contractors. You could literally, and I've done work on this and others over the past few years after leaving USAID and during Trump 45, you can literally cut the program in half and get better outcomes by simply removing this very bloated middle. And then at the same time on the ground, I was in Africa twice last year, and in Mozambique and in Kenya, and staying at a nice hotel. Every single conference room was taken up by some conference paid for by the U.S. government. That's just a waste of money. And add to that the monies that are diverted to support abortion, the LGBT gender ideology, and other things that simply do not have the support of the American people, and quite frankly is primarily responsible for these programs and USAID overall of having lost bipartisan support in Congress.
Wow. And yet the legacy media just continues to spin this and spin this and spin this against the Trump administration, but the waste is just unheard of. This has got to come to a stop. Are you hopeful that we will indeed see the end of this waste?
I am. This president has been so committed to respecting the American taxpayer. The Doge came in and did amazing work. They're still doing amazing work. Many of them have stayed in their respective departments and federal agencies, looking through the data sheets, the line items of spending, making cuts. And you've seen Secretary Rubio. He's undaunted by the attacks. And if you listen to... Just a few seconds we have left. Sure. That's basically it. They are committed to making the cuts. You've seen OMB doing it. And with talent coming into the State Department, I think in around 3-4 months, you're going to
Max Primarek, got to end it right there. Senior Research Fellow, Heritage Foundation, thank you so much. All right, next, the latest from Israel, so stick around.
Family Research Council is committed to advancing faith, family, and freedom from the East Coast to the West. So FRC is going to Southern California for this year's Pray, Vote, Stand Summit, October 17th and 18th at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. Join us for this powerful gathering of Christians desiring cultural renewal and spiritual revival. The Pray, Vote, Stand Summit brings together Christian leaders, issue experts, and government officials for a time of prayer, inspiration, and action. Together, we will seek God's guidance for our nation and engage in meaningful discussions on the intersection of faith, government, and culture. If the spiritual foundations and the cultural walls of our nation are to be rebuilt, we all have a role to play. May we each find our place on the wall as we build for biblical truth. Register now at prayvotestand.org. That's prayvotestand.org.
Jennifer, it's so exciting to be here with you today talking about our new book, Embracing God's Design. Who is actually going to benefit from reading this book in your view?
There's so many different audiences that can benefit. The first one are counselors themselves, right? Because we have some material in there where we really address the gender dysphoria diagnosis and what is wrong with it. We have information for people who are wanting to go back to embracing God's design for their life.
This is really magical to have the therapist and the individual who suffered come together and write about why this is happening and why we're seeing this.
And we brought all of that experience to the table. We want to see people walking in the fullness of who God has called them to be and not a false identity.
Order today at embracethedesign.com.
How should Christians think about the thorny issues shaping our culture? How should Christians address deceitful ideas like transgenderism, critical theory, or assisted suicide? How can Christians navigate raising children in a broken culture, the war on gender roles, or rebuilding our once great nation? Outstanding is a podcast from the Washington Stand dedicated to these critical conversations. Outstanding seeks to tear down what our corrupt culture lifts up with an aim to take every thought and every idea captive to the obedience of Christ. Whether policies or partisan politics, whether conflict in America or conflict abroad, join us and our guests as we examine the headlines through the lens of Scripture and explore how Christians can faithfully exalt Christ in all of life. Follow Outstanding on your favorite podcast app and look for new episodes each week.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Washington Watch. I am Jody Heiss filling in today for Tony. Before we go into this last segment, I've got a couple of real quick announcements I want to throw your way. First of all, I want to really encourage you, if you've not already done so, to register and then come join FRC and other like-minded believers at our upcoming Pray, Vote, Stand Summit. It's less than 2 months away. It's going to be taking place in Chino Hills, California on October 17th and 18th. I promise you, this will be an event that you will be so glad that you were a part of. So if you've not already registered, I want to encourage you to do so. You can, and you can also get more information by going to the website prayvotestand.org, prayvotestand.org. And then secondly, I've had a couple of people just in the last several days ask me about FRC's Stand Firm app. This is an incredibly powerful app. It's something that presents the news, keeping you informed as what's happening around our world and our country from a biblical worldview perspective. If you don't already have the Stand Firm app, again, let me encourage you to do so. It's free. You can get it at the App Store. You can also get it at Google Play, wherever it is that you get your apps, or you can simply text the word app, APP, text app to 67742. And I encourage you again, you won't be sorry for having Stand Firm. All right, yesterday, Israel's Air Force struck strategic targets in Yemen. That was in response to the missile launch against the Jewish nation by the Iranian-backed Houthi militant group. And according to Israel's defense minister, the IDF destroyed the Houthi presidential palace in Yemen, and they also attacked some fuel depots along with some power and electricity stations. And frankly, considering what we saw happen to Iran, do the Houthis really want to learn the hard way what the price is for aggression against Israel? Well, joining me now to discuss this and other Middle East developments is Chris Mitchell. He is the Middle East Bureau Chief at CBN News, and he is joining us now from Israel. Chris, it's always great to have you on Washington Watch. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Jody.
Okay, let's start, if we can, Chris. Can you provide with us some more details about this attack, Israel's attacks, and what they were responding to?
Well, Jody, what they're responding to is that the Houthis continue to fire ballistic missiles here at Israel, either central or southern Israel. Air raid sirens have been sounding just a few days ago. They've also fired a ballistic missile that had multiple munitions inside that missile, which could actually cause even more danger if it was not intercepted. So the Houthis, unlike Hezbollah, Hamas, and even Iran, are the only ones left of this Iranian proxies called this Ring of Fire in the Middle East that are still firing at Israel. And I think Israel's response is an attempt to finally silence the Houthis. They do seem to be learning the hard way, as you say. They're really taking a lot of devastation for continuing to attack Israel on a regular basis here in Israel.
Now, I understand there was a new type of weapon that was fired against Israel. What made it new? What was this?
Well, as I mentioned, Jody, it had multiple munitions inside the missile itself, which could be distributed over a wide area, causing a great deal of physical harm to anyone in that area. So that was a new development that the Houthis developed or sent with this ballistic missile. Thankfully, it was intercepted, and people were kept from that harm. But that was a new development, one more escalation of the Houthis against Israel here.
Wow. Well, that was information that I wanted some clarity on, Chris, so thank you for that. I also understand earlier today that the IDF troops struck a hospital in the Khan Yunis area, and there have been reports of harm, deaths to both civilians and potentially journalists. And can you give us the latest on that? What is the truth, and where does that stand right now?
Well, just a little while ago, Jody, the Prime Minister's office actually came out with a statement, and they said that Israel deeply regrets the tragic mishap that occurred today at the Nasser hospital in Gaza. Israel values the work of journalists, medical staff, and all civilians. And it says the military authorities are conducting a thorough investigation, which is that was just released a few minutes ago, as well as the IDF came out with a statement that they are investigating the incident. Apparently, there were 5 journalists that were killed, and that maybe as many as 20 as killed in that mishap. The IDF did explain that the IDF is operating in a very complex military situation, and often in situations where Hamas uses civilians, even journalists, as human shields. So it's a very, very dangerous place. Hamas does this on a regular basis, but Israel is apologizing and for what they believe is a tragic mishap right now.
It is a complex situation, and these human shields that Hamas uses, do we know if that was the case in this particular incident, or is that yet to be determined?
It seems to yet to be determined, but it would seem likely the way that Hamas does operate by using human shields, by operating in hospitals as well. They have done that throughout the war. In fact, before the war, they have constructed an elaborate tunnel network under hospitals. The Shifa Hospital comes to mind as well, and many others. So it's a very difficult situation for the IDF to target Hamas terrorists and try to mitigate any harm to civilians, whether they're journalists or just medical staff. A very, very difficult situation that Israel has been operating in ever since after October 7th.
Would you have any idea, Chris, other than the hatred for Israel that we see in so many places around the world right now, but what you just described, Hamas using human shields, and be it hospitals or schools or whatever it may be, to house some of their military operations, and yet the legacy media continues to ignore that and not bring it up. Is that a direct attempt to harm Israel, do you think, or just oversight?
Well, it seems that way, Jody. It seems like a deliberate way to demonize, delegitimize Israel. The stories that are coming out of Gaza are sent around the world, and they seem to fuel these massive rallies sometimes as far away as Australia or London or other cities in Europe, where these images are just fueled and by and just calling for ways to eliminate Israel, which means Palestine from the river to the sea does mean the elimination of Israel. So it does seem a deliberate attempt. We've seen examples recently, Jody. The New York Times published that photo of an emaciated child. But it wasn't due to starvation. It was due to cerebral palsy and other images like that. It does seem like either irresponsible journalism, who not providing the context and the full story, and yet those images go out often around the world before actually the truth comes out.
Yep, great point. I'm glad you brought that one back up again because, those images go back and they speak. I mean, the old adage that a picture's worth 1,000 words, those things have an impact on people. On a related note, Chris, Israel is also getting attacked right now, if we can use it that way, for aid distribution and the situation with that. I understand you were just inside Gaza last week. Can you share with us what you saw, what you heard and experienced?
Yeah, Jody, we were at the last Thursday. We went to see a distribution site from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. They've been operating inside Gaza now for about 3 months, and they have provided over 130 million meals for the people of Gaza. I had to see firsthand some of that distribution to some of the women of Gaza who are getting potatoes and onions and some essentials to go back to their families. One woman was telling us this is really the only aid that they receive as a family. So they're doing what they can in a very extremely difficult circumstances, very dangerous circumstances, and yet they're doing what they can day by day. They have 4 distribution sites running right now. They plan to have, they're building 4 more, and they hope to go up to 16. Right now, what this is doing, Jody, it is undermining the monopoly that Hamas has had over the food distribution since the very beginning of the war. It's estimated that Hamas has sold the aid that it steals that comes into the Gaza Strip and made about $500 million just last year. So what that does, it helps them to recruit other fighters, to pay for arms, and it actually helps them control the population. So the GHF is doing an amazing job to try to avoid and go around that monopoly by Hamas and providing aid directly to the people. I heard their responses to it. They're very thankful for that. And so that's one way Israel is actually facilitating this aid going into Gaza. It kind of undermines this whole idea of starvation. There is a lot of desperate people, no doubt about that. But Israel is doing what they can. Israel is also facilitating hundreds of trucks into Gaza of aid. Most of that is stolen by Hamas, and Israel really doesn't have any control once the trucks are in. But it's estimated they have sent in about 2 million tons of food since the beginning of the war. That's an equivalent of almost 1 ton per person.
Wow. Yeah, I can only imagine where that $500 million has been spent, as you were talking about that. That's an amazing amount of money. You can just be assured that it is indeed going back to aid Hamas and their efforts. You have mentioned, Chris, in your reporting, and I think this is important based on what you were just sharing, but the battle that Israel is facing right now, it's certainly a battle for survival, no question about that, but it's also a battle for the truth, just the overall truth getting out. What's your overall assessment as to how that's playing out, given what you just saw last week in Gaza, where you just explained how Israel is facilitating the aid distribution? Are they beginning to turn the corner on this battle for truth?
I'm not sure they're turning the battle, Jody, but it is probably maybe even a more important battle than what's happening on the battlefield is this battle for truth. Because what happens is that many times the information or misinformation or outright lies go further and farther before Israel can present its own case. And so that's, as we have mentioned, it seems to fuel this hatred of Israel, this demonization of Israel around the world. It's fueling anti-Semitism, where many Jews, fear for their lives sometimes. I know it's very dangerous. We've heard that from firsthand from Jews in France, as an example. But the battle for truth, and about a week and a half ago, I was at a press conference with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was asked that very question, and he said, actually, they're not winning that battle right now. I think they're losing it. But it really does need to be something that people are aware of, that there could be misinformation out there. They need to understand the context of certain situations, just like this tragic mishap today in Khan Yunis. So it's very, very important to be praying, actually, for Israel and the Jewish people, that this truth does get out of what the real situation is happening, especially right now in the Gaza Strip.
Well, we definitely want to be calling people to pray for that specific issue. Chris, also I wanted to ask you about Israel's plans now to take over Gaza City. Again, you were there. What can you tell us about how that's going right now?
Well, this is maybe the final phase or the next phase of Gideon's chariots. This is Gideon's chariots 2. They're trying to encircle Gaza City. This is perhaps the last major military stronghold of Hamas. They're trying to evacuate up to 1 million people out of harm's way. They are establishing humanitarian zones down south, medical facilities, so that the people of Gaza get adequate care and adequate food, which actually belies this whole idea that Israel's actually committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. They are calling up maybe as many as 60,000 reservists. They should be coming online probably around September 1st. So preliminary actions of Gideon's Chariots 2 have begun, but perhaps the major offensive should be in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, there are reports that negotiations are continuing, and Israel is demanding that Hamas release all of the 50 hostages, both living and deceased, and also lay down their arms, surrender. Not sure that's going to happen, but this is where we are right now, on the eve of this major offensive into Gaza City, and trying to eliminate any civilian casualties. One other thing, Jody, people should realize is that the IDF texts people, they call people, they send leaflets, they show people where to go, get out of harm's way. They try to minimize civilian casualties. On the contrary, Hamas uses those very same civilians as human shields. There are reports that they've actually killed their own people as they try to leave these safe areas. And I'll add one other thing, Jody. When we were down there at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, we were warned over and over again. Now, when you release these stories, make sure you blur the images of the people receiving aid or the aid workers, only because that Hamas will target them. They have murdered some of these aid workers, and the people that come there to get aid actually put themselves at risk if Hamas knows where they are and what they're doing.
Thank you so much, Chris Mitchell. Always an honor to have you on with us, Middle East Bureau Chief at CBN News. God bless you, be safe, and we will continue praying. That wraps up this edition of Washington Watch. We'll see you again tomorrow, right here.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com.